Thank you so much for being here. This week's article is about postpartum planning, which is something that I think a lot of people don't know that they need or would like to have. And it's something that you know a whole lot about. So I'll let you introduce yourself. And then we'll get into some good conversation about postpartum planning.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Ali, for having me here. My name is Amy Tucker, and I'm a certified perinatal mental health coach and postpartum doula. I live here in Austin and started a company called Life with Baby in 2019 with my dear colleague, Erin Fosnot. And at Life with Baby, what we do is we provide direct mental health support for parents that are navigating emotional challenges throughout all phases of parenthood, through fertility, through pregnancy, adoption, surrogacy, loss, and postpartum. And what we provide are virtual one-on-one emotional coaching sessions and our Life with Baby pregnancy and postpartum planning workbook. And what we really do is help parents focus on processing their emotions, building coping skills, and reducing their overall stress by offering fast and accessible care that really helps bridge that gap in mental health support. So ultimately, no parent falls through the cracks.
Really important, really, really important stuff. I'm glad that there are people like you and Erin out there doing this. So could you kind of explain exactly what postpartum planning is? That's something that maybe a lot of people haven't heard of.
Absolutely. I'm pretty confident in saying most people have heard of a birth plan, but the easiest way to think of a postpartum plan is that it's the continuation of that birth plan. It's what happens after the baby's here, and it really focuses on how to support parents both practically and emotionally through everyday life during the postpartum period. And all too often, the baby remains the priority postpartum, which is understandable. But the needs of parents can very quickly get lost and deprioritized. And what's important to remember is the family is a linked system, meaning that the parents and the baby are all equally important. And when we talk about creating a postpartum plan, it can be really important to include or think about 5 really main components. And then we'll go into a little bit more detail on like what exactly goes into the plan. And the first part of your postpartum plan is to write it down, like actually write it down. Having that tangible document that you can hold in your hands, pulling together all of your needs and your wishes into one place makes it really easy to work with. And the plan is for both you as the birthing parent and also your partner or support person. The second component that's really important is that it's a really awesome tool to use as a conversation starter. And what I mean by that is ideally, a postpartum plan would be created in the 2nd or 3rd trimester of pregnancy. But I will say it's never too late. So even if your baby is already here or if your baby is 10 months postpartum or 10 months old, it's never too late. But what your plan does is it allows you to think and talk out loud about your needs with your partner and your support person. And really, it's an opportunity to talk about your specific and unique feelings, concerns, triggers in a neutral space and time before the arrival of your baby, when you may feel more sleep deprived or overwhelmed, maybe really high. And the third component of a postpartum plan is to share it, to really talk about the plan and share it with your OB, with your midwife, with your lactation consultant or doula or mental health provider, or basically anybody on your birth team. And what this does is it creates this beautiful, comprehensive support network that truly has their arms around you and can help support you. And when you share it, it gives permission for your support people to check in with you as needed. And the fourth component is to remember that your postpartum plan is a living document. And what that means is you can change it, you can update it, you can modify it as many times as you need. As you progress through your postpartum time, meaning that it's never set in stone, nothing's ever locked down, and you can anticipate changes. Things are going to change. How you feel and what you need when you first come home with your baby is going to look very different than what you might need when you're 3 months postpartum. So really anticipating those changes. And then lastly, I would say the fifth component of a postpartum plan is it is such an awesome tool to really help provide you as a parent with a sense of clarity or direction. And what we know is so much fear from the unknown comes when you become a parent. And so by creating a plan really gives a sense of direction for parents when they can feel prepared, they can feel proactive, and they can have a plan in place in case more support is needed. And ultimately, at the end of the day, the goal of a postpartum plan is to avoid being in a situation where you need help and you don't know what to do, you don't know where to start, and you're so overwhelmed, you have no energy or capacity to take the next step forward.
I love this. I think it's brilliant. We do forget about this. So many of the things you said just now are things that people need to hear before they become parents. It would have been so helpful for me to know some of these things. One of them being just the fact that the baby usually does get prioritized once they're here. And when you're pregnant, it's different. When you're pregnant, you're carrying the baby. You are on this pedestal, right? You are the focus. And then as soon as that baby gets there, that's over a lot of times, right? And you are not the priority anymore. And in fact, a lot of times you can't even give yourself, or other people might not think to give you any attention at all, but definitely not enough. And that leads to just more issues, because like you said, a family is a system, and if any one part of the system is broken or needing some nurturing, then the whole system suffers. So nurturing ourselves is super important. So a postpartum plan for that, and the postpartum period is so much. The birth plan, a lot of people make birth plans. In fact, I'm leaving here to go help someone make a birth plan.
Yes.
So that a lot of people spend time and energy on, but then we lose that next piece. We don't know the importance of doing that. So I love that you said that. And I love that you said that, of course, writing it down is important, sharing is important, all that, but also the fact that it's a living document, like you said, that it can be modified, and recognizing that that's one of those 5 components that you listed from the top, because it's important to know it's okay to do that. It's okay to change your mind later. You might have some ideas of what your needs will be while you're still pregnant, and it's good to create that framework. But then, when the time actually comes, you might have a different outlook, a different set of needs. And so recognizing that it's okay to change that. We do change. And that's very normal and good and okay. Okay. I love it. And what you said about it being direction and clarity, a lot of people want control, and we can have some level of control during our pregnancies, and even sometimes in our births, although that can be pretty unpredictable. But then babies are very unpredictable, and postpartum life can be very unpredictable. And so losing that sense of control can be so hard. So recognizing ahead of time that maybe we don't need control, but some direction is nice. Some guidelines are nice.
Yes.
And so that's what this is, right?
100%. You nailed it. Yes.
I love this. Okay. So then what next? So what does it actually maybe look like? Some examples of what might go on this postpartum planning document.
Yeah. So you can kind of think about it as like different buckets, right? And so, or different areas, so to speak, that you would put into your plan. And the first one is emotional support. So this is really looking at and becoming familiar and educating yourself with like, what are risk factors for developing a perinatal mental health condition? What emotional support do I anticipate needing? How have I overcome challenges with my mental health in the past? What are coping skills or tools that I like to use when I'm feeling overwhelmed or sad or anxious? Like, it's really getting a little bit, digging deeper and really identifying like what specifically works for you. And this is so important, this emotional support bucket, because the number one complication from childbirth is depression and anxiety. Number one, Ellie. So it's so important to really have that emotional support identified and in place and part of your plan. Another bucket in postpartum planning really looks at everyday, we kind of call it everyday basics. So this is looking at like, what does self-care look for you? How are you going to eat? How are you going to sleep? Who are your professional providers? Like, who do you contact? What is that after hours phone number for your pediatrician? And then really thinking through like, what are some supplies that I need for, my postpartum body or for my recovery? And then thinking about your household, right? Like, what are those household tasks that need to happen to keep things running smoothly and the way that you prefer, and who can help with those tasks specifically within your home? And then another bucket or area, we call it transitional preferences. So this is really looking at like, what are your preferences for how you're going to feed your baby initially? Do you want to breastfeed? Do you want to bottle feed? Are you going to pump? How do you want and where do you want your baby to sleep? And this is one of those areas that we really lean into, that space of a postpartum plan being adaptable and flexible, is that this may change. This may change multiple times, and that's all okay. And another big transitional preference piece is the return to work considerations, whether it's for yourself as the birthing parent going back to work, or when your partner or support person may be going back to work, and what are some of those steps that you can do to help ease that transition. And then another bucket is communication. So relationships and communication is so huge during the postpartum time. And this is relationships you have with your partner, support person. It could be with your in-laws, with your neighbors, with your friends. But this is really identifying like, how is it easiest for you to ask for help? Do you like to send a text message? Do you like to pick up the phone and talk to people? Do you need to write an email? Like, what does that look like to make it feel a lot easier and a lot more fluid for you? And then communication also goes hand in hand with boundaries. So this is something that maybe a lot of people hear about in the postpartum time, but it really is looking at like, when do you want people to come over, and who do you want to hold the baby, and how long can they stay? And really thinking through some of those common areas of where boundaries can be really, really effective is a really helpful part of your postpartum plan. And then lastly, I would say the last bucket of your plan are resources. So this is that area that I mentioned of like identifying what resources are accessible to you in person, online, and really identify what they are and how to connect with them before you need them. So this could be, for example, online support groups, or breastfeeding support groups, or groups, new parent groups that meet in person and go take their babies for a walk, whatever it may be. But it's really finding what those resources are that may be most relevant to you, and identifying them, and then just including them into your plan as well.
Yes, 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 and yes. All those things are so important, and things that, like you said, when they come up in the moment with this new baby, with this postpartum body that's still healing and doesn't maybe feel so great all the time, our limitations, restrictions, it can be so hard to come up with the answers to those things right then. And so having it written down on a plan, having something to just refer to, like, what were we supposed to do about that? Like, oh my gosh, I'm having trouble breastfeeding right now. Oh, we have a phone number. I'm going to go ahead and say Breastfeeding Success,
Yes.
512-808-0237.
Yes.
I'm going to call the 24/7 warm line and get some breastfeeding
Yes.
support. And it's written down right there on my plan, so I don't have to go digging around to find that resource. I know that for a lot of people, they wonder where are they going to get those resources. Go talk to Amy. Come talk to me. Join La Leche League groups. Join our Bosom Buddies groups right now. Ask your OB. Ask your doula.
Yes.
You can ask a lot of the people who are currently supporting you in pregnancy for resources for your postpartum time. A lot of those people have long lists of things for you. And so definitely getting those, adding those to your postpartum planning document. I love that idea too. And everything you said. I mean, the boundaries thing, I think so many people don't recognize how hard that can be. And just knowing that you might need to set some boundaries can be helpful, and that that's normal. And most people do go through that. And then the piece you said about self-care, because I think you used that buzzword, and you used it in a way that makes sense to me, having been postpartum twice with 2 babies, but might not make a lot of sense to people who have not. It might look different. So you mentioned self-care in the same breath as sleeping and eating. And so at one point in my life, I might not have considered that self-care, but can you kind of just explain the expectations we might have for self-care in the postpartum and what that might look like?
Absolutely. And you're so right when you talk about self-care being a buzzword. It is, and it can mean so many different things to people. And what we read online and what we hear from people, everybody has a different definition of it. And people can think of self-care as, some sort of fancy vacation away or a day at the spa or, those treat yourself moments. But really what it is at the end of the day is it's taking care of yourself in a way that supports your overall well-being and your recovery. And so you're totally right, Ali. Like you mentioned, I like to think of self-care being equally as important as eating or sleeping, the things that keep us thriving and alive and healthy. It's kind of the easiest way to think about it is it's not like a luxury or an additional thing that we do, but truly a critical component to our care. And so what can feel so overwhelming during this postpartum time when your days are full and your time is so limited, that self-care can be simply checking in with yourself. And what I mean by that is it could be pausing long enough to tune into your thoughts or your feelings or, a physical sensation that you feel inside your body. Like, oh my gosh, my neck is really tight. Like I've been hunched over all day, breastfeeding all day. My legs hurt, my feet hurt. It's just tuning into yourself and getting curious and just observing what shows up. And this kind of checking in with yourself, it can be done literally anytime. It could be 4 a.m. It could be when the baby wakes up. It could be in your car. It could be at home. And it's free. It doesn't cost $1. And it could be done, honestly, in about 30 seconds. So I always encourage people to start with just that simple exercise of just simply checking in with yourself and taking a beat and just seeing what shows up.
Yeah. And sometimes what might show up is, oh, I haven't peed. And the sensation is I need to use the bathroom, or I'm tired and I should close my eyes. And those things can get overlooked, but then it becomes self-care to attend to those needs. And so important in
You're
that
totally
recovery
right.
period.
And I'm glad that you mentioned rest too, because we know how important sleep is during the postpartum time. It may be the number one priority for parents, right? And there can be a lot of pressure around sleep of, oh, baby went down for a nap. Like it's my 45-minute opportunity to like get in bed and go to sleep. And that can often prevent people from falling asleep because you feel so
Yeah.
much pressure. And that's where I love that you mentioned the word rest, because rest can be as equally as restoring to your body and to your mind. And like you said, that could be turning off the lights and closing your eyes. It could be like getting down on the floor and just laying on the ground. But just giving yourself permission to be still, or just say, nope, I'm not going to do the laundry today or do the dishes. I'm just going to sit and be still, and I don't have to be productive. That is the ultimate example of self-care.
Oh, but doing that is so productive, right? We know this because
It
your body's
is.
healing, and the better your body heals now, the better you are in the long run, and the better everybody is in the system. The whole family benefits when you let your body heal properly, and it takes time.
Absolutely.
It takes time.
Yeah.
Pregnancy and birth really can take it out of a body. So letting that body rest and heal is very productive. So I like to remember that.
1000%. Yes. Thank you for that too. And it is, it's almost like redefining what is productive, right? We're like, what does productivity mean? And as long as you're feeding yourself and your baby and tending to your emotional well-being and your rest, that's kind of it, right? Like that is productive. That is tremendous. And that also invites the whole idea of self-compassion too. And often, people might hear the word self-compassion, and it can mean, again, different things to people, but it really, we know that postpartum time is full of so much uncertainty and often, quite a lot of guilt and self-doubt. And practicing self-compassion is honestly just simply being kind to yourself when you feel like you're not doing a good enough job, or when you feel like you're struggling, or maybe you're not producing as much milk as you wish that you could. It really is that self-care piece, is giving yourself grace during that time, and honestly talking to yourself the same way that you would talk to your best friend. And that could literally be like saying out loud, what's on your mind, or what's bothering you, or what you're struggling with, and then just flip it. Imagine that your best friend just called you and told you what you just said out loud. And then say out loud, what would you say to your best friend, right? And then just reflect that back inwards. It can be really, really helpful to think of it that way. And also acknowledging that self-compassion is so important, but it can often be one of the hardest things to do.
Thank you. Yes, everybody needs permission
Yes.
to do that. I mean, maybe we shouldn't need permission, but we all have it.
Yes.
Okay, so that's all I have. I don't have any other questions, but do you have any last things that you might like to offer before we say goodbye?
Yeah. I would say just maybe a few parting thoughts, and just kind of key, like, little golden nuggets to take away. If you take anything away from this talk today, is that everybody on this earth has to learn how to become a parent. Nobody knows how to do this. Nobody has the instruction manual. Everyone has to figure this out. And there will be those inherent times of distress and struggle in the post period. It's going to happen. There will be challenges. And by having that written, shared postpartum plan, it really does provide that framework to support you during this time, give you that sense of direction, and have those resources identified before the actual need arises.
Yes. Again, another thing I wish someone had told me ahead of time. Nobody's got it all figured out. It's okay that I don't either.
Yes.
Okay. Well, Amy, thank you so much for being here
Yes.
and giving us all this great information. I really want everybody to recognize your Life with Baby workbook is a great resource. It can help them create that postpartum planning document. Or it's sort of like it is that, right? I mean, it's like, it's the guide and it's the template. It's the everything you need right in there. So something, and we'll definitely link to that in the in the article, and hope to have you maybe at one of our groups at some point in the future, our local groups, to come speak about this topic. If you're willing, I'll go ahead and put you on the spot right now.
I would be honored. I would be honored.
Good. Okay. So maybe people can look forward to seeing you in person if they're
Yes.
in the Austin area sometime soon. That's all I have. Thank you so much, Amy.
Thank you so much, Ali. Thanks for having this resource, and thank you for all the incredible work that you do to support parents. This is fantastic.